Alrighty, folks, a real fast writing workshop, just going over some of the basics, the things that you need to understand when you are writing anything for school or really anything in general, okay? First and foremost is capitalization. You need to be capitalizing certain words when you are writing. Now, I know a lot of this seems kind of elementary, but these are issues that I have noticed in high school students all the way up into grade 12. So this is something that we really need to work on. We need to be conscious of when we are writing. First and foremost, you should always capitalize the first letter of a sentence. This is the easy one. Whenever you add a full stop, an exclamation point, or a question mark, you need to have the very next letter be a capital letter. Okay, so the first letter of every sentence needs to be capitalized. Additionally, we need to capitalize proper nouns. Now, a proper noun is a noun, so a person, place, or thing, but that is proper, okay? Hence, as I just kind of made that like, well, no, duh, proper noun is a noun that's proper. Okay, so what I mean by this is names of individuals, okay? Names of place. If I'm talking about Matthew Larson, right there, the M in Matthew and the L in Larson need to be capitalized because they are proper nouns. If I'm talking about the United States of America, United States and America need to be capitalized because they are part of the name. Now, if I'm talking about the mountain, that is not going to be capitalized because it is a thing, okay, unless the name is the mountain. If the mountain's named mountain, then it's going to be capitalized, okay? So when in doubt, ask, but if it is the title of something, what you are actually calling something, its official name, then you need to be adding capitalization. Punctuation, okay, this one right here, the period as we call it in the United States, or the full stop in other parts of the world, this is going to be used after a complete thought to mark the end of a sentence. Okay, you will also use a period after a abbreviation. Okay, so for example, if I'm going to use doctor, capital D, R, then I would add a period right through there, and I would continue on with my sentence, but you need to have a period. You don't need to have a period, but a period will be used after a complete sentence. Okay, if you don't have a period, you need to have a question mark, which is added at the end of a question. So, something you were writing that is a question, okay, it's a full statement, but it is also a question. Instead of using that period or that full stop, you're going to be using a question mark to denote that this is a question. The colon right through here is added before listing something. So, for example, I could be saying, please go to the grocery store and grab beans, bread, milk, and eggs. Right before I say beans, bread, milk, and eggs, making that list, I'm going to add that colon right through there. This here is a semicolon. My recommendation is just don't use these, okay? These are a challenging thing to use correctly, so when you are in high school, right through now, until you are 100% confident exactly how to use these, do not use them. Okay, because you have a better chance of messing it up than actually doing it correctly. Now, I am not saying that you cannot use these. I'm just recommending highly that you do not use these until you are very, very confident on all the rules associated with using a semicolon. If you're not 100% confident, do not use it. Stick to something that you know. The comma right through here, this is used to separate list or introductory phrases. Okay, so if I were to be starting something off like, firstly, comma, you need to go to the store. Firstly, I would add the comma, then right after that to separate that introductory phrase, or when I am making a list. Please go to the store and buy eggs, milk, and bananas, okay? Eggs, comma, milk, comma, and bananas. Please note, you will never, under any circumstance, end a sentence with a comma. You will never end a sentence with a comma. This is a mistake that I have consistently seen with high school students. You do not do this. Do not ever, for any circumstance, on any planet whatsoever, end a sentence with a comma. You simply do not do that. If you are ending a sentence with a comma, most likely you're using a comma in place of a period or a full stop. Add the period, full stop, and you're going to be good to go. Again, if you have questions, just ask, okay? Another thing when it comes to talking about commas, I highly recommend that you do not use more than one comma per sentence unless you were making a list. The reasoning why is oftentimes I'm seeing students who are writing long run-on sentences that would be avoided if they would stop using commas and start using some full stops to break it up. So a good way of avoiding run-on sentences is to simply not use a comma more than once in a sentence unless you are making a list. Then you can use it more than once. Otherwise, I would highly recommend you simply use a comma once in each sentence to avoid making that a run-on sentence. Now with paragraphs, okay? Paragraphs are used to separate different ideas. There is no limit on how many paragraphs you can use per paper. Okay, again, there is no limit on how many paragraphs you can use per paper, so do not think that you have to have 5 paragraphs in every single paper. Just because it's oftentimes broken down into an introduction, at least 3 body paragraphs, and then a conclusion, so it oftentimes kind of breaks down to 5. There is no set rule that says you have to write 5 paragraphs, okay, or 20 paragraphs, whatever. There is no limit on how many paragraphs that you can use per paper. That is going to be limitless. When you are writing paragraphs, remember the acronym TIP top, okay? This is when you need to start a new paragraph. If you look right here, okay? When the time changes, when you go from one time to another, you need to start a new paragraph. So if you're writing about something, tonight I went and I had this for dinner. In the morning, I did this, okay? When you start in the morning, the time is changing. Therefore, you need to have a new paragraph. When the place changes, when you go from one location to another. So if I'm starting off, first I was in Bozeman, then I traveled to Butte, right through there. I'm going from Bozeman to Butte, 2 different places. I need to be changing my paragraph. When the topic changes. Now, this one gets a little bit confusing, so make sure you are looking at specific topics and not general topics, okay? If I'm giving an entire, writing a paper about countries, okay, for example, and I start talking about Afghanistan, and then I'm going to be talking about Russia and China. Yes, they're all countries, but the topic is changing. I'm not just talking about countries, I'm talking about Afghanistan, Russia, and China. Each time I have a new topic, I need to change paragraphs. And lastly, when a person changes. So if someone else comes into the picture, you need to be adding a new paragraph. If someone leaves, you need to have a new paragraph, okay? So an example of this one is, I was talking to my mother, blah, 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 and then my brother came in. New paragraph right through there because someone else is coming into the picture. So remember, when you are writing, you need to have a change of paragraph whenever the time, the place, the topic, or a person involved changes. Okay, so if someone else comes in, someone leaves, you need to have a new paragraph. Now, if this means you have a paragraph that's going to be like 3 sentences and another paragraph that's 7 or 8, that's fine. Make sure you are understanding the correct way to use a paragraph so that you break your writing up correctly. Additionally, with paragraphs, okay, I have this slide twice. We're just going to keep going. Oh, no, I don't. Right through here. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, paragraphs are used to separate different ideas. Again, there's no limit on how many you can use per paper. Usually, it ends up being about 4 to 8. However, that is not necessarily going to be a requirement. Again, you can have less than that, or you can certainly have more. It's really going to depend, okay? Sentence number 1 is usually telling us what the paragraph is about. Just like when you're writing a paper, okay, you want to have an introductory up front, you want to do the same thing in a paragraph. So that first sentence is going to be telling us what that paragraph's about. The next couple sentences, okay, or however many are in that paragraph, are going to be used as evidence to prove your point. First, you're telling us you're talking about chihuahuas. Now you're going to be talking about the specific stuff about chihuahuas. And the last sentence is going to explain why it matters. In all reality, I should be able to look through your paper and read the first sentence and the last sentence of each paragraph and know exactly what you're talking about. Everything in between is just the evidence to prove your point and to prove you know what you're talking about. The 2 most important things, though, to understand content are going to be your first one, where you're telling us what it's about, and the last one kind of explaining why that is going to be impactful and important. Now, when you are constructing a sentence, you need to always start with a capital letter. Again, no matter what sentence you are writing, it is always going to be starting with a capital letter. You need to avoid starting sentences with conjunctions. Okay, the acronym fanboys, jazz hands, woo! Right through over here, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Do not use these to start a sentence. Okay, there are some instances where you can start a sentence with one of these. However, it is very, very unlikely, and most of the time in your writing at a high school level, and even in a college level, this is not how you're going to be wanting to start a sentence. Okay, so avoid starting a sentence with for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and, so. Okay, do not do that. Every sentence must contain a subject. What is your sentence about? And it must, okay, right through here, and an action. What is happening to that subject? Okay, so the dog is running. Now, what is the subject? The dog, okay? What is the dog doing? The dog is running. Avoid using more than one subject. When you are using more than one subject, your sentence is no longer a correct sentence, but it is going to be a run-on sentence, so break it up. If I were to be saying the dog is running, the cat is eating, that's going to be 2 separate sentences right through there because there's 2 subjects. Your sentence needs to have about 1 subject to it. Now, an introduction. Your introduction paragraph needs to provide a hook. Get the reader interested in what you are writing. Now, this can be as simple as stating something like, a random fact, it can be a quote, it can be really a lot of different things, but it's something that's going to drag the reader into what you are writing. You also need to define the terms to show your reader that you know what you are talking about. If you're answering a question explaining the impacts of capitalism on the Weimar Republic, okay? For example, right there, you better define what capitalism is so they understand that you know what you're talking about. You also want to define what the Weimar Republic is so they know kind of what you're talking about. Make sure you understand the terms and you are explaining those terms. If you're giving an essay and you're talking about similes and metaphors, you need to tell us what a simile is, what a metaphor is. Make sure you define those terms and then go into your thesis statement. Your thesis statement is a part of your introduction. Yes, it needs to stand out because it needs to be its own kind of unique thing, but it does not literally need to stand out. You do not write an introduction, skip a line, and then write your thesis statement, skip a line, and then start writing your essay. Your thesis statement is a part of your introduction. Remember that. Your thesis statement is a part of your introduction. It is usually the last 1 to 2 sentences of your introductory paragraph. Okay? Your thesis statement does not need to literally stand out. You should not do that. Do not do that. It is wrong. You should not be doing it. Okay? So if I'm looking right here at this introductory paragraph sample, we see a number of different things. Number one, this paragraph is about the invention of Braille and how it's a major turning point in the history of disability. We know that right through there. We're introducing what we're saying, okay? We're getting a hook right here. It's a major turning point. It's just not a turning point. It's a major turning point. We're giving some background and explaining what it is, okay? We're talking about Braille. We need to know that Braille is a system of raised dots used by visually impaired people. Okay, we need our understanding right here who it's for. This is where it's talking about the defining the terms right through here, going on, blah, 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 blah. You will see in this one right through here, instead of the thesis statement, they're going to be used, well, it's technically a thesis, that this essay begins by discussing. Don't do that, okay? You don't need to do that. I know that's what your essay is going to be about because you're writing it. So instead of saying that, just go right into your thesis statement. It describes blah, 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 blah. So you can see right through here, they get a hook, they defined the terms, and then they went in with their thesis statement, even if it's a thesis statement in the way that I do not like. Now, the body of the paragraph is as many as it takes. Do not think you can only have 3 bodies in your paragraph because you got a perfect 5-paragraph essay. That is not going to be the case. You need to have a continual flow within your writing. Avoid asides, okay? Something that kind of doesn't really fit with what you're writing. Make sure it all fits together. Avoid those different asides. Indent your paragraphs, okay? That's where you click tab on your computer. It's going to pop it over. So the first line of each paragraph is going to be a little bit farther into the page than the rest, which makes it easy to identify your paragraphs. Lastly is a conclusion. Your conclusion needs to be about the same length as your introduction. So if you have about 5 to 6 sentences in your introduction, you should have about 5 to 6 sentences in your conclusion. You need to restate your thesis, but in a different way. Okay, so for example, the templates for a thesis statement. If you initially use the something does something because of reasons one, puppies chew because they are teething, right through there, in your conclusion, you need to restate your thesis in a different way. Because they are chewing, puppies, or because they are teething, puppies chew. You're going to restate it in a slightly different way. You do not want to give the exact same thesis statement verbatim, word for word in your conclusion. If you do that, it is not going to be correct. So if you use these templates, simply use a different formula of that template. You're going to be set right through there. You need to explain the significant points of your essay from your paper, similar to how you do in the introduction. You're kind of giving a real quick summary of your entire paper, to a point that I could pretty much look at your conclusion and know exactly what your paper is about. Go full circle, okay? Whatever you talked about in the beginning, make sure you wrap everything up. If you don't wrap it up, you're going to have a problem. Questions, comments, let me know. Otherwise, see you later and good luck.